This was going to be very clearly, very honestly with you guys, very, very basic. And by that, I don't mean brain dead, boring, obvious. I mean very focusing on the most important aspects of the map itself and not obsessing with the details. Check this out. So, first point. One thing that everyone needs to know for attackers is that you need to be very cautious about walking out in the open and getting your head blown off at this point in time. However, usually the best operation or mode or pathing for attackers is not to go through train unless the enemy team has completely forfeited this high ground. If the enemy team is back on point, it's fine to go to high ground and establish some of your people up here, but going through here is a tunnel of death. And it's not just this that is particularly bad. Actually, this tunnel is survivable, but it is getting out of this choke that is the real misery, because when you walk out, you have people off-angling from top, you have people sometimes stuffing this choke here, but more importantly, you have people from this angle here, from here, from here. It's a giant, nasty, I hate the term, but kill box. You're all walking out of a tiny Paris-like choke with multiple different angles all swimming into a small room. It is the easiest spam in the history of the world. I generally never, ever recommend people to go out this choke. So, then what are your options there? Well, there aren't many options. Your other options generally are one of two. Number one, you can either walk through main, look to spam people off of high ground, generally swing off this way, establish your DPS, poke high ground from here. They have high ground, you're on low ground. It kind of sucks, but there is more space. There is more space. Thank you for the Sevdolas.
Guess who's drugged? Can't stand up and pees into a duck, but watches anyway.
Glad the surgery went well, mate. Hope you're feeling better. But yeah, this is a much bigger, I mean, you could just compare the size of the chokes. Yes, you have to forfeit high ground, but this is a significantly bigger choke, which is worth giving up a little bit of the high ground control just based off of what you see. Now, that's not the only option. The other option, which can be a hybrid of walking through choke, but it can also be a team-wide issue, rotation, is to go through this choke here and flip around here. Now, you're like, this is a tiny choke. Yes. However, teams will rarely meet you on this corner because they don't have very many good angles to spam you out. So they generally hold their ground, allowing you to complete this rotate. Now, this is the TLDR of the section, guys. Once you get to this point in time, you want to be leveraging 3 different points in the map. You can leverage this choke. You can leverage this back area into this building here. Or you can continue this rotate and continue all the way through and leverage this back section of this map here, even through here, going up to high ground and so on. If I were to use my mouse to simply kind of show, well, I can't really use my mouse. It's do not get stuck here. Utilize this space, utilize this space, utilize this space. Flankers, snipers, DPS, heck, even tank and supports. Utilize this space around the map to set up better and safer positions so it's easier for you to damage and easier for you to see the enemy team. Stop slam banging up through this choke into here. And another thing here too, guys, please, obviously if you're on a Reaper May composition, maybe, but please stop getting to this choke here and then trying to run it up the stairs. Just spread out, take angles, take different safer positions with good cover and good corners, please. This is really important. So all the details of like whether this high ground is relevant, whether this choke is relevant, nothing super impactful here. When you do manage to cap first, be aware that teams will often try to retake on you, which makes positions like holding this high ground up here really powerful. In other words, if the enemy team, if we do get people on point, can you guys see my mouse? If I were to press enter here, can you guys see my mouse? No, you can't. Rip. Okay. So, in other words, if I take these positions here, when the enemy team tries to retake the contest, this is actually pretty decent here. These high grounds here. You can get like your back line here. Don't all stack on point either, because then it makes it really easy for you to get flanked from here. But more importantly, it actually makes it really easy. For example, if a DPS peeks here and you're just standing out in the open here, easy pickings. Where you can be setting up here, and then if anybody tries to recontest point, you're actually shooting them in the back. Okay, so first defense. So first defense, you're just generally going to have people defaulting up to here. You might see people poking early on, but you really don't want to fight here. You have such a nasty choke to leverage from either this position here, and really this isn't a great choke either. So you want to try and leverage these high grounds, but A lot of it really depends on your composition. For example, if you're playing a really short range composition, generally you're not going to want to play it back. You're going to try and hold this high ground really close, and if they push you up here, you smash them in the mouth, or if they try and push out from up here, or do this goofy little rotate that we talked about earlier, you could just drop and beat the ever-living crap out of them. However, things get a little bit more nuanced when you've got things like snipers and soldiers and sigmas, right? You'll probably have somebody, at least somebody controlling high ground here. Maybe your tank is going to control this high ground here, but then everybody else kind of takes different positions. I, as a flanker, will often like to kind of control this area of the map. So if I'm playing like a Genji or a Tracer, maybe as a Genji, a defending Genji, I can kind of hide up here and harass them, and then if I get pressured, I can always dash out. Same thing with a Tracer or even a Sombra, right? I'm controlling this area of the map, harassing the flankers. If they walk through the choke, I can immediately have access to the backline. I can be really sneaky and sneak around behind, right? If any of their DPS try to take a flank, I can prevent them from taking this flank. And then if their whole team rotates out here, well, I just back away and then I'll find a different way to get to the back line. And then for supports, a lot of it depends, right? Sometimes I'll have a support playing with the tank here, but I oftentimes like having one of my supports, you know, maybe up here, but then I like playing one of my supports, especially if I'm playing like an Ana or a Zenyatta, Kiriko, Bap, something like that. I like this position here where I have a good, nice, wide open range sight line here. I can help my flanker over here. I can help if they push high ground. I can help if they push on main, and I can spam a lot. Now, obviously, that will depend on certain variations. If they're running like a Widowmaker variation, a sniper variation Hanzo, then this position isn't very good because the sightline is long. But if you are playing more of a spam like ranged hero and they aren't running like a Widow, then this is really good. You got great vision of really everywhere on the point, and there's really no way that they can sneak up on you at all. The only way that they can flank you from here is by going across point, wrapping around this way, and then contesting you from here, or if they're perma invis like Sombra. But this flank is not easy because you should be able to see them setting it up, and again, you can see them approaching as well. So this is all pretty good. You can definitely utilize this fire engine as well at different points in time for different heroes as well. Like I think if they're pushing through choke, there's certain heroes that like kind of utilizing this, peeking up here. I wouldn't stand on top of fire engine because it's too wide out in the open, but you can definitely use this fire engine as cover and poke and prod. So this position here is good. This position here is good for more tank short range heroes. If you're playing like a support or more long range hero, maybe even a Widowmaker, this position is here. If you're playing Widowmaker, you could even position all the way back here and cover basically the entirety of the high ground from here. Just be aware that the fire engine does prevent you from peeking out here and seeing the choke. Flankers will generally play this area of the map because this is a flank, shocking, and it's short sightline. It's a very congested area. There's lots of cover, lots of sneaky little sightlines that you can use. I wouldn't recommend utilizing this building too much. You can play around it, but the problem is once you're in this building, you're kind of stuck because for you to get back to your team here, you're going to cross out in the open. For you to get from here to, again, cover, you're stuck. Once you're in the building, you are in the building, and you're in the building for good, and there's not a lot of options to move and flux. Whereas here, if you need to drop, you could back out to the fire station, you could drop it back out towards here. If I'm stuck here as a support player, I can even back up further, right, really far, or heck, I could even do a funny rotate all the way around here, right, and have a different sideline. So first defense is generally very fluid, depends entirely on your composition, but I would highly recommend, again, avoid fighting in train most of the time. Avoid fighting ahead of train. Look to set up to try and punish either this choke if they path up top, or set up angles to punish this choke. If they do break the choke and they do manage to get out to here, no big deal. You can still control this high ground here. You can still control this choke right here, and again, just set up to punish them on these chokes right here. If you do play for a recontest, try and split. Try not all go out this choke or all go out this choke. I think this choke is really bad to send a lot of people out of. You try and split up as much as you can. What do you think about early poke and defense on point one? It's okay. As long as you don't get punished for it, it's not a big deal. Second point is tough. Second point is all about getting the cart out of this choke here and then getting it to here. And then again, it's all about the space you control. A lot of people tend to turn off their brains, very similar to first point, and trying to just brute force cart all the way through under here. Now, sometimes that's possible. Usually that's not. What I recommend trying to do is to try and control the two or even really three specific areas in the map. One is this is a good off angle to utilize here. You can use this to contest their high ground or at least stage for dives on their high ground safely if they're using that. The second area of the map that you need to control is looking to clear out and rotate through up in here. Make sure there's no flankers in here. Make sure there's no DPS in here. And then if you clear out this space, you can set up your own snipers and DPS to utilize this angle to contest space. And the third one is continuing that rotation all the way through here. You notice there's a mega in here, by the way. Continuing this rotation all the way through here through old spawn, which will be unlocked, and then wrapping through here. So you can do it that way, or you can also go through this door right here. And basically what this does is this allows you easy access to their high ground, either as a flanker or some other hero that wants to sneak up on them. Now, this means that you have 1, 2, 3 areas of the map to contest and control, to clear out, to utilize for your own purposes, besides just sitting on cart. I highly recommend ranged heroes trying to utilize brief peeks here when their tanks are engaging on them. This is a great position for a safe little sightline with good cover. You can also look to utilize this position here. Flankers can utilize this angle as well to stage in the backline, or they can utilize this flank all the way through here. If you're playing tank, I highly recommend either looking to stage and dive on them from here, right? Or looking to just spam them from a safe angle like this here. Or if, for example, you're a Reinhardt or Orisa, you can utilize this position here, drop to here, and then push them directly from here. You're able to close the distance very quickly and very safely. The other thing you can do as a tank as well is we talk about we don't want everybody on cart. However, if you can turtle up on cart and push robot, push cart, push cart, push robot, push cart to here, maybe the enemy team falls on you, and in which case hopefully your DPS and supports have good off angles to punish them in the back, whereas you have a good you just need to survive essentially at that point. So I highly recommend trying to take control the areas of the map. Basically, the goal of this this review is to just highlight the most important areas of the map to understand and control. Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the defensive side of things, which is going to be one of actually pretty interesting here. So there's like really 3 locations in this map where you're generally going to be playing defense. One, you can do what we call a soft spawn camp, which is where you hold here. This is actually generally pretty good for 2 reasons. One, if you lose this fight here, you do get generally a safe recontest on second without feeling too bad. Like in other words, the cart's not moving when you're holding here, so you will definitely get a recontest if you do lose this fight. The second reason why this fight is good, I did skip first point defense, I'll go to it in a second, is because you can stuff this choke here pretty easily, and you can stuff this choke here pretty easily. It is hard for attackers to swing out here and try and contest you if you just smash them in the face. So especially if you're running like a good short range composition with a Reinhardt or a Orisa or a Reaper or May or Junkrat or even like some spam like a Pharmacy flying in the sky, it's really easy to just fight on these corners. Utilize your high ground position here, maybe utilize a high ground position here with the support, and just abuse these chokes as long as you possibly can. And it's really not very easy for attackers to break out of. They have to try and get a trade, abuse the respawn advantage, and so on. Then if you don't get a chance to spawn camp, obviously high grounds here are really strong. We talked about the attackers, what they're likely to do, and you need to be aware of those things, which are most likely this flank here. You need to be aware of this flank here, make sure that nobody's utilizing this flank here, and make sure that nobody's going to be doing like a leapfrog over this section and harassing onto you. So utilizing this high ground is really good. You guys can take like an off angle here, you guys can take a position here, you can take a position here, you can utilize, even if you're going for something sort of aggressive, you can utilize this, right? If you're defending, very greedy, very aggressive, but something that's good to know for flankers as well. Okay. But generally you're trying to just put as much spam as cart. Do not let them rotate, do not let them push cart, and then if they do end up pushing cart, well then you can still hold the high ground. You can just shoot cart from here if you're on defense. All right, now like let's say if you guys are able to like you lose out, you have to retake, and they're all on the high ground. So attackers, you've done a good job. You've pushed the cart deep, you've won the fight, and now the attackers are on the high ground up in this vicinity here. Well, then oftentimes what you end up having is defenders playing on the back part of point. Now, this isn't really good. This isn't great. There are a few options, though, which you can talk about. One is utilizing this cover here is really important, not standing out in the open, very bad. Number 2 is you can utilize these back buildings here. So sometimes you'll see snipers or soldiers or whatever is holding these positions here. There's not a lot of great cover here, but there is some cover. You can kind of utilize this door frame here, which is okay to use. You can also utilize this flank and this building here. Again, not always great. This does have an opening here for like a Genji to wall climb up and over. And you can go through this door up here to sneakily contest their high ground from here. Okay. But by far, the most common flank used by whether it's a tank, DPS, whatever, if you're going for a clutch play, I don't care if you're going flank Yada Jonak mode, right, is this flank here. When you're on defense, you can recontest, go through up here, sneaky mode, and whammo. You have a great flank onto their high ground. High risk, high reward, but oftentimes that is a really good way to break this defense or break this attacking position from the enemy team, because the rest of the positions on the map just aren't that good. If you just sit on cart here, you're likely to eventually get whittled down from their high ground off angles. So that's a good thing to know for defense. When do you contest the cart on defense? So if you think that you can just hold high ground and not be contested, you really want to spam cart so they don't move it at all. But like let's say if you have to contest, you would sometimes drop your tank and then let your DPS hold high ground, or you can just let them push it and then again continue to spam from your high ground position even if it's here. Now keep in mind, if you do let them push cart from underneath the bridge, it is one fight territory. The other thing you have to consider as well is that technically by utilizing this right here, if they push the cart far enough, they can directly walk out onto your high ground. So just be aware of that. A lot of this high ground, whether it's on attack or defense, a lot of it is just being aware that you can be attacked from this angle here. You could be attacked from this angle here. You could be attacked from this flank from behind, or you can be attacked from this flank from behind. So it's about leveraging that high ground, but not losing your situational awareness, because there are multiple, I mean, heck, we could even talk about this here, right? You could be here, right? They could have an enemy jump on top of you from here. So you need to be aware of like, where are the enemies around you, and then trying to hold and to leverage that high ground in the meantime. You can take fights underneath as well. There are sometimes, like if you're running like a Reinhardt composition, you want to drop on the enemies, you can fight them here on attack and defense. It's totally fine. But generally, fighting in here isn't really great for either team because it doesn't always provide a lot of advantages. Okay. Third point. So third point is it's fairly interesting. It's not a whole lot of nuance here. Generally holding, pushing. Let's talk defense here. So I was like considering defense first because usually your attack is depending on what the defense is doing, right? They kind of get to choose the engagement place. So I think defense, very rarely will you see teams fight in this position here, because remember, the off angles that you have to control on defense mean that you're stuck. For example, if I'm holding here a soldier, not only could I get flanked from here, but if I get pushed, where do I kite to? Where's my rotation to? Either you're going to run out in the open, or you're going to run through this mega, you're going to run the stairs, you're going to run through here, again, more out in the open, or you're going to get into cover here, and you get to here. It's just a nasty, big, ugly, long rotation. So what you'll generally see is that this choke is not super contested because attackers can still utilize a lot of flanks. Look at this. Oh, they can do all sorts of sneaky stuff on you. So defenders will like to try and leverage one of two things. Either they're going to leverage the choke, this choke right here, where it's hard for attackers to get good angles, or they're going to leverage the high ground. Depending on the comp that you'll see, they'll either leverage this high ground here, or they'll leverage this high ground here. So for defenders, I think this is perfectly reasonable to do. I like defending this choke a lot, and then trying to set up, if I have heroes that can control high ground, heroes that control high ground up here, or even heroes that control the low ground here, because this is a really good off angle off of this choke. And then the only thing that's a surprise is either through here, my cats are literally sprinting around the house, is the flank through here, which is very high risk, high reward, right? Very high risk, high reward, very punishable. Or this flank here, which is low risk, but also low reward for most heroes. So it's pretty easy to kind of keep, there's nothing really sneaky the attackers can pull on you. So I like controlling this choke here. I do like sometimes controlling high ground as well. And there are certainly times, like for example, if you know that the enemy team has a lot of ultimates and you're like, we need to get 2 fights here, it's very reasonable for you to kind of hold this choke here, knowing that you're going to lose it, but you're going to force out some ultimates, maybe make it a mess, maybe get some trades, and then you can recontest for sure. Whereas if you hold back here, yes, you will get a recontest. Thank you for the sub, Jay. Good to see you, mate. Long time no chat. Whereas if you hold here, you will get a recontest, but it's going to be kind of hairy. Like, they're going to be able to push really aggressively on your spawn doors, okay? So then, if, let's say you lose this fight and maybe get a chance to set up, this positioning here as well is also pretty good to hold, whereas you can hold this corner here, and then you can set up all sorts of flanks here. So, like, we see DPS setting up for here on defense, right? We can see DPS setting up from here on defense. We see people sitting literally in these spawn doors. Like, look at this little crossfire you get as, like, a sniper hero here. You get flankers a lot of times utilizing this area of the map, Genji's tracers, or even if you're playing like a Hanzo and you want to go very aggressively, there's all sorts of stuff that you could do through here. Like, look at this here. So from here, you have all this cover, right? All this cover. You have the mega. You have the elevator to top, which you can take, which takes a little bit of time, yes. But then all of a sudden, do you see how you have this hard flank in their backline here? You could even use this as a soldier, sneak around behind. But there's a lot of this side of the map to play around, and you'll notice that with MIDTOWN, where you have certain areas of the map that are more, my cats, are more involved and more open for snipers, and then a certain section of the map which is more available for flankers, shorter sightlines. Think about first point, right? Left side of the map, from a defender standpoint, generally more open. Right to the map, more congested, and that's kind of the way it goes oftentimes. What do you think about the train? The train is pretty good for defenders because you can utilize this flank here. but it's actually a little bit less impactful than you would think. For attackers, it's not a great position because you're shooting here and you can't really see anything, and then for you to get to a position where you can shoot, you have to play pretty aggressively, where it would probably be better to just do the same thing, but just do it here instead with better cover. So anyway, defenders, that's where you want to go. If you do end up getting people stuffing in your choke here, try and not just walk out like this here. Try and set up like an off angle here. I really think if they're aggressively holding your spawn doors and the cart's about to cap, I think one player utilizing this flank is like super, super, super high value, easy access to enemy backline. It's usually surprise factor as well. So I highly recommend that. Okay, quickly moving on to the attacking standpoint. Remember we talked that most likely teams are not going to be spawn camping you or holding this choke here. However, just keep in mind that teams will often try and look to shoot your spawn door, so just be aware of that. You can kind of utilize this little door here. So where is it? You can kind of utilize this door. Is this door ever open? I feel like it does, yeah. You can use this door here and come out this side, and this provides a little bit better cover. And then from here, you have immediate access into setting up your flanks here, or even flanking around from here. And the same thing goes on here too. If you're getting like really, truly spawn camped, you can go out this door here, and then you can wrap around right side, wrap around here, and then you could either go up the stairs through here. And then I know this is like a pain in the butt, right? But you could do this whole number here. But basically, TLDR, if they're trying to hold this choke here, it's very similar to Hollywood third point, where it's actually really difficult for defenders to hold this choke just because of there's doors on the right and there's doors on the left that allow you flanks and access to their backline. And you have the better respawn. So generally, you won't see that happen. If it does happen, that's how you're going to deal with it. It's going to be setting up cool flanks, looking to get it behind them, looking to set up an angle on their backline, and just whittle them down, okay? Remember, any kill that you get is better than a kill that they get because your respawns are closer. All right, so from there, a lot of attackers will generally take the time to push the cart to here, and oftentimes this is where defenders will hold. So you've got a couple of options. You could either go 3, 2, 1, just smash into them and ignore the map control, or you can try and set up people on high ground, which generally attackers have the advantage because this stair is more accessible. And generally defenders, for example, if you get pushed here, you can just back off, whereas defenders, if the defenders back off from here, these guys up here are often isolated and they have to drop down from here. So I think this high ground is relatively decent to utilize if we have heroes that want to utilize it. For example, let's say they're not even using the high ground, you as a Genji could actually dash across, or Tracer could blink across, and then you can actually set up for their backline from here. It's a good little tool to use there. We talked about this angle being a high risk, high reward. It's definitely high risk, high reward. It doesn't mean it's not worth using, it's just high risk, high reward. So something to kind of keep in mind. And then the really, really low hanging fruit that if all else fails, you should definitely be utilizing this, is this one right here with the mini, where as any sort of range hero, range threat, you could peek through here and get a decent sightline and create space from here. And the other thing you can consider here is if you have any form of mobility and you can get to this angle here, this is also pretty good here. Obviously, you cannot just jump up here. Last I checked, I don't think you can jump up here. So you're going to need to utilize either a helix jump, Hanzo wall climb, Genji dash, or something like that. So breaking this choke is a lot of times just a war of attrition, trying to utilize one of these, either the high grounds or one of the flanks, and then trying to utilize cover as best as you can. Now, if we get to late third, again, corner cover. You have to find corner cover. This is a wide open point, which means it's very easy to get sloppy and get poked out, which means you need to be utilizing corner cover. Mega is here, something to kind of keep in mind, but generally, you're going to be trying to kind of control this space here. And then what I often recommend is you need to try and pick a side and leverage that side as an attacker. In other words, left or right. So now I'm talking about this from a team player's perspective. I understand that in ranked, there's not going to be like this level of coordination. However, if you're a DPS player, you need to ask yourself, do I want to utilize this side of the map? Is this side of the map better for my hero, whether that's, a shorter range hero, or is it this side of the map? And again, as I kind of implied there, it's going to depend a lot on the range that you're playing. This side of the map, this cover on this train here, even playing here, maybe more aggressively even. This is pretty good if you've got more range. However, if for shorter range heroes, this doesn't feel super, super good. So oftentimes you'll see heroes, Genji, Tracers, Cassidys, Junkrats, things like that, utilizing this side of the map because it's got good cover, short sightlines, and it doesn't feel so wide open exposed. So this side feels generally pretty good. Just keep in mind that in terms of health pack, there's a mega here, but that's about it. There's a lot of no man's land on third point, a lot of wide open space, which is definitely going to influence which DPS feel good here. But if you're leaning towards the side that better matches your character, that's going to feel good. Also, keep in mind, it's good to keep pressure if you get the cart pretty aggressive to try and stuff these chokes as much as you can. Just be aware that there are 3 of them, so that you can put a lot of early pressure and make it really hard for the Indian team to get out of the choke. And then that's pretty much it. Don't get sucked into fighting on point, y'all. Don't get sucked in. You need 1 person on cart. Everybody else can be taking good off angles and good space to clutch these fights out. You see fights lost that are won because somebody gets sucked onto the cart and then gets flanked, flanked and shot from behind, and that's how you lose those situations. So try and keep yourself disciplined with how you position and control space, and just let your tank be in cart, whoever's in cart, or even just don't have anybody in cart for a brief period of time and just win the fight, then cap the point. So MIDTOWN is, I think, outside of a few exceptions, is a pretty fun map to play. I think a couple of complaints that I have is I think definitely second point sometimes feels a little bit frustrating to attack to because of how oppressive this high ground is, and sometimes the flanks don't feel super good. But I think everybody's main complaint with MIDTOWN, and it's a fair one, is that the attack is just difficult. This is a very, very, very bad choke to walk through, but even the options here don't always feel amazing. Now, to make you feel any better, it's not just your bronze teammates. This in Overwatch League was relatively often, more often than just about any other map, a point where people would either get full held on first or full held on first for about 3 minutes and 30 seconds. I mean, we saw even bad teams were doing very well on first defense here versus good teams. It's just the nature of the map. So patience, do your best, and know that if you do cap first, oftentimes you'll be able to snowball off of that relatively well. Point 3 is hard to cap in your games. Is it due to the map design or just your games? No, I think map point 3 is also hard to cap. I think every point on this map is difficult to cap in some way, shape, or form. I think that mirrors a lot of escort maps or hybrid maps even. Eichenwald, second point, if played really well, Eichenwald's second attack feels really, really hard. I think if you think about something that even just a raw escort map like Route 66, second point is really rough sometimes for Route 66 if you have face against a team with like a good sniper, right? It doesn't feel very good. But I mean, we all complain about push, right? But some of these maps are pretty tough. So the map control advantage is so oppressive. But yeah. You guys have any questions about this map that I didn't answer in the review? Because I'm just going really off that this is not scripted whatsoever. This is just me just kind of like babbling. So I'm sure that I missed a couple of things. And if so, I'd like to clarify them. And then we're going to do some Ask Spilo. How useful is the one spot in first point train that you can stand on by the stairs? So here? Or are you talking about here? Is this A or B here? Or is it a different spot entirely? Top of the train, A. Yeah, this is okay. The problem with this here is though, if you get pushed here, you will need to drop off this direction and kite here. So it's, remember, a good position is usually always has like a direction of if you get pushed, where would you go? And sometimes that's why you don't see supports like Zenyatta play here, because look at Zenyatta's sightlines here. Not super good. Not super good on really either choke, and too close. So that's why I use position here where you have a little bit more range. Whereas if you have a hero like a Reaper, a Junkrat, maybe a tank, they're more comfortable playing in these short sightlines positions because they're less likely to have to rotate, but they also have more survivability to be able to do so properly. You can stand on the train. Oh, I mean, it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Like, I mean, you use this as like a Genji sometimes, yeah. Is this map generally good with brawl, spam, dive equally? Yes, actually. From my memory of Overwatch League, this was one of the maps where it mostly followed the meta, for the most part. You'd see occasionally a little bit more spam on points like first and third a little bit, but mostly followed the meta, which is a good indication that it's not a specifically oppressive map with any brawl or spam or dive. There's enough flanks, there's enough short sightlines, there's enough long sightlines to provide dynamics.